The sun was barely lifting its golden rim above the endless stretch of prairie when Jacob Callahan rode into the small frontier town of Dry Creek. His old sorrel mare plodded along the dusty road, hooves muffled in the morning silence. Jacob was a solitary man, 42, tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered by years of wind and toil. He lived alone on his ranch, tucked far from town, where acres of dry grassland stretched like a sea. He had come to buy a milk cow. That was all. His herd had dwindled, and with no wife or children to help, a sturdy cow meant fresh milk, butter, and maybe a little company in the lonely days ahead. He wasn't a man who lingered in crowds, and he meant to finish his business quickly and head back before dusk. At the auction yard, voices rose with the sharp rhythm of bids. Men in dusty hats leaned against fences, farmers bartered, and children played in the dirt. Jacob stood silently, his hat brim low, his eyes fixed on a brown cow tethered near the corral. She was strong, healthy, and calm. Exactly what he needed. But just as he moved forward to strike a bargain, a small tug pulled at the corner of his coat. Jacob turned. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7, stood there barefoot in the dust. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks smudged with dirt, and her eyes, gray and solemn, held something that pierced Jacob's heart in a way no cattle ever could. She looked up at him and whispered, so softly he almost didn't hear. "Mister, it's my mommy's last day alive." The world seemed to still. Jacob frowned, kneeling slightly so he could hear her better. "What's that you say, child?" She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "They're tucking my mama away. She's sick, real sick. Doctor says she won't see tomorrow. Please, please help her. You're strong. You look like a good man." Jacob blinked, his throat tightening. He hadn't expected anything more than a simple purchase today. He glanced around, searching for the girl's kin. That's when he noticed a thin woman sitting on the porch of a rundown shack near the edge of town. Her shoulders were bent, her skin pale as if all color had drained from her. She clutched her chest, breathing shallow, while a few townsfolk stood nearby, whispering but offering no comfort. The girl tugged again at his sleeve. "She's my mama. I don't want her to die alone." Jacob straightened, his chest heavy with a feeling he hadn't known in years. Loneliness had been his only companion since his wife passed in childbirth long ago. He had buried not only her but also the hope of ever having a family. Yet now, staring at the frail woman and her child, something long buried stirred inside him. He walked with the girl to the porch. The woman lifted her eyes, weak but filled with dignity. "Sir," she whispered, "I don't know who you are, but thank you for bringing her back safe." Jacob tipped his hat. "Name's Jacob Callahan. Your little one tells me you're not well." She tried to smile. "The Lord's calling me home. There ain't nothing the doctor can do. Just pray, my girl, find someone kind." The words cut Jacob deeper than a knife. He knelt beside her, unsure what to say. The little girl pressed close to her mother, tears shining in her eyes. In that moment, Jacob realized the cow he came to buy didn't matter. Fate had brought him here not for livestock, but for something far greater. "I've lived alone too long," Jacob said softly, more to himself than to them. Then louder, "Ma'am, if it eases your heart, I'll see to your girl. She'll have food, a roof, and someone who cares. I give you my word." The woman's eyes filled with tears. Her hand trembled as she reached for his. "You'd do that?" Jacob nodded firmly. "On my honor." The woman breathed a shaky sigh of relief. With her last strength, she drew her daughter close, whispering in her ear. "Baby, this man will take care of you. Be brave." The girl sobbed, clinging tightly. Hours later, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across Dry Creek, the woman passed quietly, her child cradled in her arms. Jacob stood outside, hat pressed against his chest, while townsfolk murmured in awe. They had known Jacob Callahan as the lonely rancher who kept to himself. But today, he had taken on more than a cow, he had taken on a life, a promise, a future. The little girl's name was Anna. That night, Jacob rode home with her sitting before him on the saddle. She didn't say much, just leaned against him, her small hands clutching his worn shirt. For the first time in years, Jacob felt something warm and alive stir in the hollow place of his heart. The ranch looked different when they arrived, less empty, less silent. Anna's laughter, even through tears, filled the cabin with a sound Jacob thought he'd never hear again. Days turned into weeks. Jacob taught her to feed the chickens, gather firewood, and ride the gentle old mare. She, in turn, reminded him what it meant to hope, to care, to live not just for himself but for another. The loneliness that had hung like a heavy shadow lifted, replaced by the fragile but steadfast bond between a broken man and a brave little girl. Sometimes, at sunset, Anna would stand barefoot in the dust, watching him work with the cattle. She'd tilt her face up to the sky, and Jacob would see in her eyes both the sorrow of loss and the strength of survival. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Anna looked up at him and asked, "Jacob, are you my papa now?" He swallowed the lump in his throat, blinking back tears. "If you'll have me, little one, I'll be your papa for the rest of my days." Her smile lit the room brighter than the flames. She leaned against him, finally at peace. Jacob Callahan had ridden into town to buy a cow. But he returned home with something far greater, a daughter, a reason to live, and the quiet knowledge that even in the harshest frontier, love could still find its way.